All right, one of the things that scare people most about jewelry making seems to be fire. And if you know the proper techniques and take the right precautions, it shouldn't scare you, but it should encourage you. Because once you've mastered the use of the torch, it opens up this whole new world of jewelry making. So we're going to go through some things today that hopefully will ease your fear, give you a little bit more confidence. We're going to go through a few safety things and just show you how the torch works and the things that you don't have to be afraid of. A lot of people, when they hear torch and they think about it, they think explosions and you're going to burn things down, and it's not so much. So let's take a walk through. What I'm going to do is first we're going to start and I'm going to show you how to correctly hook your torch up to tanks. I'm going to be demonstrating with oxygen and propane. Some of the torches available on the market use either propane or butane or something. I'm going to show you with my Smith mini torch how to hook it up properly, and whether you're using propane or acetylene, it's going to work exactly the same. The two gases work the same with this torch, so hopefully that'll ease you a little bit. So let's dive in. Okay, one of the first things is, for safety, always have a fire extinguisher handy. You can see I've got one right here. It's mounted to my bench. I know exactly where it is, and it's on a hook. I can pull it off very quickly. It is a ABC fire extinguisher. It uses dry chemical and will work for anything that you could possibly start on fire at the bench. In 30 plus years of jewelry making, I've never had to use it, but I know it's there. This is my Smith mini torch that I use. I have it hooked up to regulators. You can see the green one is an oxygen regulator. The red one is for fuel. And again, I use propane, but you can use acetylene as well. They work exactly the same. I do not like to use acetylene just because it's dirty, and whenever it's lit, there's little black floaties that fly around my shop, and I like to keep it a little cleaner. Acetylene is just a little bit hotter gas to use, but I've never ran into anything at the bench that I could not solder or melt with propane. So that's the reason I use. So now we're going to show you how to hook these up. These are the tanks that I use. They're both the small versions. The oxygen and the propane, I think, are 2-pound tanks, and I think they're probably about the smallest that you can get that you can hook up a regulator to, and they last for quite a while. I haven't refilled my oxygen in probably over a year, and the same thing with the propane. They last for quite a while. So next we'll show you how to hook up these regulators to those tanks. Okay, so we're going to hook up the regulators to the tanks. If you notice, I've got a strap around my oxygen tank because it's kind of tall and it could tip over if it was kicked or something like that. So just for safety, I always keep these strapped to my desk just so that they don't fall over. I don't have a strap on my propane just because it's flat and it's bigger around. So in order to get that to tip over, you'd really have to try pretty hard and then still probably not be able to get it done. So the regulators, the green always goes towards the oxygen. So we'll just put this on there, and there's a big nut. You can kind of see how that goes. I'm going to get this tightened with my fingers. And then I've got an adjustable wrench that I'm going to slip on there and tighten. And these are brass fittings, so you don't want to really tighten them as hard as you can, but you want to get them pretty snug. Now, it's not going to be possible to put the wrong regulators on the tanks because the gas regulator is reverse threads. Let me pull that off of there. So you've heard the old saying, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Well, not with gas. To tighten it up, you turn it to the left. And with the oxygen, you tighten it up by turning it to the right. And again, put it on there with your finger. Get it nice and finger tight. And then with the adjustable wrench, we're going to tighten that up. Make it nice and snug. We don't want to, again, over tighten them because if they get stripped out, then you'll have to get a new regulator. Okay, so that should be good. They're both attached. Next, we're going to make sure that they don't have any leaks. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to check for leaks on the fitting. What I've got here is a bottle of soapy water. It's actually Simple Green, which I use for most of my cleaning around the shop. It smells good and it's environmentally safe. So I'm going to spray right around the fitting that I just tightened up, and I'm going to watch it. And if it was leaking at all, you would see little bubbles coming up, but you see here there's no bubbles coming up, so that is a good tight seal. So you can be secure and safe to know that right here there is no air leak at all. I will do the same for the other fittings where the torch lines up with the regulator. You can see as well, no bubbles are coming up. And I'll show you here in a minute what it would look like if there was bubbles. So the next thing we'll do is we will check the propane tank to make sure there are no bubbles there as well. You can see no bubbles coming up. Check one more fitting on the regulator. No bubbles. Everything is looking good, so you can be assured that there's no oxygen or propane getting into the room. Okay, what I've done is, this is the end of my Smith mini torch. I've loosened up this right here because I want to show you if I spray my water on there, my soapy water. I'm going to turn this on my oxygen, and I'm going to plug this up, and that is showing you what it will look like if there is a leak in the line. If you look real close, you can just see those bubbles kind of bubbling up. That's what you want to look for when you're spraying your regulators down, just to make sure that there's no leaks. And you always want to do that. And even if you've checked, you might want to spray your regulators with soapy water maybe every couple of months, just to make sure that nothing has went wrong and they've started to leak. But another way that you can tell is if you turn your tanks off and the dials on the regulators stay where they are, that means that the lines are pressurized and that you're not losing any pressure somewhere. If you turn your tanks off and you see the dials start to slowly go down, then you know that the pressure is relieving somewhere and that you've got a leak in your line. So then you will check and spray your regulators, check your line to make sure that it doesn't have any holes in it, and check maybe your fittings inside of here, and here. And just spray them down with soapy water. The soapy water doesn't affect anything. And if you see any bubbles coming up, then you know that you've got a leak somewhere. And if it's in your torch, sometimes you can either replace the head of that or you can just get a new torch. But as long as the pressure on the regulators doesn't release when you turn the tank off, and you make sure that these are both closed off, then you can be assured that there's no leaks in your system, and that will give you confidence to go forward in your soldering. When I set the regulators on my torch, I usually go about 30 psi on my oxygen and about 10 psi on my fuel, and that usually gives me the soldering that I need. I don't need any more pressure than that. And again, you can adjust at the torch whether you need a hotter flame or not, but that gives you the ability to solder thick things as well as thin things. So about 30 psi on the oxygen, 10 psi on the fuel. For me, I'm right-handed, so I keep my torch on the left side of my bench because I light the torch and I hold the torch with my left hand while I'm soldering, and that gives me the freedom to work my tweezers or my pick with my right dominant hand. It takes a little bit to get used to, but once you've trained yourself to work this way, you'll be much better off. Now in this area here, whenever you're soldering, you always want to keep it free of any papers or anything that's flammable, just by the chance that for some reason you're not paying attention to where your torch is, that it will start on fire. So just always be conscious of this area where you're going to be soldering. You don't want any loose papers or anything there. Now that I got my torch, there's a few ways that I can light it. One is just taking a lighter, opening up the lighter, and then opening up the gas, and you can see that it just lights right up. And then add the oxygen, and you can adjust them both on the fly. Another way is by using a striker. Now with this, what you'll have to do is turn the gas on first and aim the tip of the torch into the cup of the striker, and then hit the striker, and the sparks of the striker will actually ignite the flame, and then you can light your flame. And again, you just want to turn your gas on first. You don't want to turn both of them on, just the gas. Turn the gas on, light it, it's ready to go. The last way, which I like to use, is this is called a TorchMate automatic torch lighter. And what it is it's battery operated. You hit this button, and I don't know if you can see, but there's a little spark that goes off inside of there. You turn the gas on, you hit that button, and it'll actually light for you. So that way you always got your lighter handy. You don't have to look, where did I put my lighter, where did I put my striker? It's always right there on your bench. And the batteries last for quite a while. So I always keep it right above my bench, right here, above my torch. And again, you want to make sure that there's nothing around that will start on fire. Now once your torch is lit, you can adjust it. Add a little bit more gas, add a little bit more oxygen. The more gas and oxygen, the hotter the flame. The lighter the flame. So if you're working with lightweight, adding loops or something, or earrings or small stuff, you want to turn your torch a little bit down. If you're working with ring shanks and you need something to piece of solder that's pretty heavy, and you just turn it up a little bit. And once your torch is lit, again, always be conscious of what's in front of it. You don't want to light anything on fire. You don't want to melt anything that you aren't trying to melt. Now when you turn your torch off, I always turn the gas off first and then the oxygen, and just make sure that they're snug. Now every once in a while, when you turn your torch off, it's going to pop. And a lot of people get scared when it does that. Just to let you know, don't be scared. All that is just the gas inside of the torch tip, the torch head, just kind of popping and igniting. That flame cannot go past here, into here, down your line, and into your tank and blow up. A lot of people think that, but in order for fire to exist, it needs oxygen. And if you turn your oxygen and your gas off, sometimes, like right in here, you're just going to hear a little pop. And don't let that alarm you at all. That's absolutely normal. And just know that pop is just happening right here. There's nothing that can explode. It's just letting off just a little bit of gas. So whenever you hear that pop, do not be alarmed. It's absolutely normal. There's no way that fire can get down your line into your tanks. So just know that it's absolutely safe if you hear it pop. Okay, for soldering, I'm going to show you two examples. In the first example, you can see here on the end of my third hand in my tweezers, I've got a ring. And the ring on this, I'm going to be soldering to the ring in my other tweezers. Now this ring is a lot thinner than that ring. So I'll show you how to control your heat so that it will solder a little bit easier. What I want to do is heat up this piece first, because solder will follow heat. And if I just put both pieces together and add the heat from the torch, the solder will flow to the thinner area because it's got less mass and it'll heat up a lot quicker. So what I'm going to do is heat up this area first until it gets very hot, and then I'm going to add the thinner piece with the solder, and you'll see that it won't, the solder won't flow to the thinner piece, but it will actually flow to both pieces. So let me light my torch. You can see, and for this piece I'm not going to use a real hot flame. First thing I'm going to do is I've got some handy flux, and I'm going to add a little bit of handy flux to the solder joint. And I'm going to pick a little bit of that up with the small piece. And I've got some pre-cut solder, and I'm just going to pick up the solder with the small loop. Hopefully you can see that. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up this so that it gets hot. And when it gets good and hot, then I'll add the solder in the other piece so that it solders. Now both pieces are soldered together. If I wouldn't have done that first, the solder would have flowed up to the thin piece and it would have looked kind of clunky, but you can see it soldered nice. You always want to make sure when you're soldering a thin piece to a thick piece that you always heat up the thick piece first and then add the solder in the thin piece to it. Otherwise, the solder will run to the thin piece and you'll run into problems. Okay, in this second example, I'm going to be soldering something that's the same thickness. This is a thick loop, but like a ring shank or something like that would actually be the same. So again, what I'm going to do is add a little bit of my flux, and what I use here is it's a paste flux called Handy Flux. And I'm just going to add it just to that solder joint. I don't need to add it to the whole piece, just to that solder joint. Again, I'm going to take my torch and I'm going to light it. Add a little bit of oxygen. Now I'm going to grab a little bit of this flux off of there, and I'm going to pick up my solder with the flux. I'm going to heat this piece until you'll see the flux start to bubble, and then once it quits bubbling and turns kind of a glaze, then I'll go in and I'll add my solder to the right above the joint. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat this up from underneath, and actually what it'll do is, again, like I mentioned earlier, solder follows heat. So if I heat it up from underneath, the solder, when it melts, it's going to pull all the way through that solder joint. So that means that you're going to be getting a good secure solder joint. So as I heated that up, had the torch from underneath, the heat melted the solder, and the solder followed the heat, and the solder went all the way through the solder joint, making it a nice, clean, solid, strong solder joint.